everyone to the October 24th Union City Council work session. Welcome to everyone here at home. Thank you all. I missed you last week, but I actually had a really good conference. It was just amazing. Our first items, and thank you, Betty, for sharing that.
You're welcome.
So the first item we have is committee reports and items of interest from mayor, city council, and city managers. So I'll just start off, and I went to a conference called Railvolution, which is really about rail and transit. And there were like 1,900 attendees.
Wow,
It's huge. The Railvolution conference began out of Portland, so it is a creation of our state. And there was just a lot of wonderful information about the success of mass transit and creating livable communities with thriving businesses. And they talked a lot about the trends, and they're ever stronger, indicating the growth of multi-unit housing and changing demographics that want that kind of housing, preferring more urban living, not only young entrepreneurs and retirees, young families as well. So I'll share more information with you about it, but it was a lot of excellent factual information that is useful to all of us. I also went to the first rail meeting for the that I'm co-chairing for the rail alignment between Portland and Eugene this last week, and so that was just sort of beginning to get all the pieces in place, not actual taking any steps yet. I spoke at the Cascade Collaborative up in Portland. Came back from the conference, went immediately to Portland and spoke at the Cascade Collaborative on rail. And then today participated at the Bureau of Land Management meeting at the Hilton, talking about the West Virginia Collaborative. I wanted to take note and thank Craig Weicker and actually Kelly Osborne from our staff for the really fine financial planning day, free finance, and United Way too, for the financial planning day that was at Willamette High School over the weekend to help people who can't afford that financial planning to get it for free from professionals was a really wonderful contribution. And I wanted to thank our city manager and Chief Kearns, who I know we're going to talk about this more this evening, but I just wanted to thank them for all the hard work in the last few days to keep things moving along smoothly in our community around the Occupy Eugene. Thank you very much for that. And let's see. I also had a chance to speak to the professional women's group with the mayor of Springfield. And I guess today at 3 o'clock I issued a proclamation in honor of Eugene Food Day. So there you go.
I've been busy. I went to the ballet yesterday, and it was wonderful. I continue to marvel at how much we have in the way of arts for a city this size. But I attended the Workforce Partnership Board Executive Committee meeting, and Workforce Partnership is focusing still on the career readiness certificate and on-the-job training. And they've received some state money and some money from the Association of Community Colleges, though they still need more money. But the on-the-job training, the mayor and I both mentioned the work readiness certificate before now, but on-the-job training, I don't know if I've said that much about. They give up to $5,000 per employee if the employer will if they pay at least $10 an hour and give them at least 30 hours a week of work, and guarantee to keep them for a certain amount of time. Well, it sounds like a very good program to help people get started on a job, people who are mostly qualified but need a little more training. A problem has been brought to my attention. It's not in my ward. It should be, but it isn't. But
oh, yes.
The people just outside the university parking area are having a big problem because there's 2-hour parking up close to the university. So people who are just outside that area can't park their own cars because students are parking there and walking to classes or biking. And I don't know what can be done about that, but some people who don't have garages are having to fight for a place to put their own cars where they live. And thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Mayor. Welcome back. So it was busy here without you. Actually, before you left, though, you and I both were at the SMART celebration where we read books to young people at Bertha Holt Elementary School. I got to sit with Commissioner Sorensen and read to a young man who was quite precocious. He told us his second favorite thing to do was just to be with us. So I thought that was really cute.
And smart.
Smart, yeah. Recess. And so, anyway, and then
Yeah, by recess,
I just kind of want
yeah.
to give you some updates on some things, some people that I've been visiting with. I'm sitting in with a work group with Food for Lane County. It's a 6-month commitment, and we're looking at their work plan for the next years and trying to see just really, what their issues are and, adjustments. I mean, they have all kinds of ideas. They're just asking for input from the community members. I met with folks around the rental housing code ordinance. Interesting conversation there. I sat in on part of the River Road score last week, and then I went over to Train Song. EPD, I think, isn't it Rex Barong, who's the captain over that area? Am I right? Am I wrong? Okay, I think it was. Anyway, he sat and visited with the community for a while. I've gone to several of the PSCC meetings. We had one last Thursday, and then on Friday, actually, I'm part of the youth committee that they're having, and it was a pretty lively conversation. They had presenters there from a couple of folks, Greg Evans and John Larson, who is head of, I think, Serbu Center, or he's in some kind of administrative role. But it really, our conversation that we had, our presentation on local street gangs really kind of resonated with them, and that pretty much permeated the conversation. And we're going to be drafting a recommendation or a letter of support to PSCC around funding, around that issue. It was pretty interesting. There was a couple people there who, young people there who really had some different insight that I hadn't heard, so I was really appreciative of them being there. I got to go to the Business Expo this last week, and that was a lot of fun, a lot of people, good times, chatted with quite a few people about different things. And then Councilor Clark and I are starting our conversation again on the ambulance fund, and so we'll be meeting this Thursday, and we'll be meeting every other Thursday. I think we're trying to get it done by the end of the year through the holidays. And that's it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would just quickly mention the business conference, which I thought was great. I was very glad to see the number of city folks that were there representing a variety of different areas. I thought it was a good blend, a very well done conference. I thought it went very well.
Mine had been taken. I as well went to the expo and thought it was terribly well organized. And I'm looking forward to us finding some solutions with the ambulance transport issue. We handled it for a year. We came up with some creative ideas, but long term it needs a better solution, and we've got a plan to do that. So, looking forward to that.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of things real quickly. One, I want to talk about an instructor at LCC. I think most people here know him, Steve Canby. He very active in the community, does a lot of wonderful things for Eugene. And one wonderful thing he's doing is he every now and then asks somebody to kind of shadow me a little bit, be an intern in my office. And tonight I'd like to introduce Sean Bofto, who is from Steve Candy's class, and you'll see his face around council meetings, just seeing how we do things. So welcome, Sean. And just on food security, Andrea, you brought it up again, as you often do. Just want to mention the SNAP program in Bethel is moving forward, scoping food security and the possibility of community gardens, year-round community gardens. We're in the beginning of the process there, and it's going to hopefully it's something that's going to last for a long time. It will happen throughout Bethel. The first one is going to be happening at Fairfield Elementary School, as a plan. And along those lines, I touched on this. Recent polling was just released on food security. The question was asked about Eugene City Council supporting food security as it pertains to community food gardens. And the results are in that, not surprisingly, 80% of the community support the council being involved with food security, while 7%, I wonder who those folks are, oppose it. So thank you, Mayor.
Alan?
Yeah, I didn't get to talk about the neighborhood summit the last time we did this because I was on the phone and I passed, but I just wanted to compliment staff on that particular summit. I've been to all of them. I think there's three. They've all been very good. That one was well done, well run, good keynote, and I think real effective. And I think it helps the neighborhoods really feel engaged with the city. So, and numerous of us were there. So, I also attended the Sustainability Commission meeting last week, where we talked about rental housing code and our work plan and our liaisons to different groups and networking, as well as the one in particular, the Coordinated Land Use Transportation Action Committee, CLUTAC, which is a fun acronym, but it's the Sustainability Commission and the Planning Commission jointly getting together to talk about sustainability and transportation, or sustainability and planning issues, a lot around transportation. Sustainability Commission's got, I think, 4 new members, and so we're off and running, getting them up to speed and moving along with the work plan. The area around Betty, the 2 areas immediately adjacent to the University of Oregon with regard to parking is the Fairmont neighborhood to the east, which has a university or arena parking district, and then the South University neighborhood south of the university, SUNA, does not have a parking district, but they're working on getting one, so that and replicating somewhat, not exactly the same rules, but somewhat around the same idea as the arena parking district, where you'd get permits and restrict. And all of those folks that live in that little sliver of the multifamily housing would be excluded from that parking district, so they wouldn't be getting permits, as are a lot of the big apartment complexes around the Fairmont neighborhood. And then finally, this Saturday, I had an opportunity to go on a bike ride with advocates from the Head and Bike Plan, and so we rode around my ward and talked about the different and looked at the different new things that are happening in the in bicycle boulevards, where they would be, what they look like, bike paths, and especially cool was riding, and I've done this actually a couple times now, but riding the new area on Alder Street between Franklin and 19th, or 18th, sorry, where they have a new a bike dual lane and buffered from the from cars, and that hopefully later today, when we talk about the extension of that to 24th, would be a very good idea. But it's a new way of doing it, and it's a great way of being able to ride bikes safely.
George?
Just a reminder to the people in the Harlow Neighborhood Association area, we have a meeting Thursday, the 27th, 6 to 8 o'clock p.m. The North Park Community Church, 3484 Harlow Road. Guest speakers, Mayor, Representative Nancy Nathanson, Captain Stronach, and EWEB Commissioner John Brown. So we've been getting a pretty good turnout at the Harlow Neighborhood Association, so it'll be a good one. I, too, went to the Business to Business Expo, and I thought it was very well organized. Congratulations to whoever that might be. And for the first time, I actually got to walk around with my daughter at one of these things. Usually it's my wife and I, but my daughter's getting a little bit more active in the community, so she was there, so she and I managed to spend some time.
You'll have to explain why everybody's smirking about
Organizational.
Oh, what's her name again, Mike?
Yeah, somebody that I live with is the events organizer for the chamber, so yeah. Events manager, excuse me. Give her a
And then also we had our Travel Lane County Executive Committee meeting. The board meeting is this Thursday, but I'm not going to be able to make that because of a previous commitment. But we had the rough draft of our annual audit, and everything seems to be going smoothly. And then the last thing I'd just like to point out, if you get a chance to go out and check out Willackenzie Crossing, it's the affordable housing project going in where the old Willackenzie School is. They've got pretty much all the solar panels up already on all the buildings. There's one little section of buildings that they're just finishing the roofing on it, but it's coming along real quick. So it's a real exciting project. And I was not able to make the ribbon cutting for the ramp there at the Willackenzie Grange because I got held up.
Oh, yeah.
So congratulations to the young Eagle Scout that put that project on.
George?
Thank you, Mayor. I went to the Mackenzie Watershed Council retreat at Camp Harlow a couple weeks ago. We reviewed our progress on this current year's work plan, looked at areas where we did well and achieved the goal and where we could have done better. And we also approved next year's work plan. So I don't want to spend a lot of time on that. I'll wait till my scheduled, commission presentation in a month and a half, something like that. I also attended on Saturday a weed destruction party at Civic Stadium. It was really good when we actually, not a weed party, a weed destruction party.
Yes, George, we got
Blackberries.
Burn them?
No, we didn't. We
several small fires?
tossed them on a
can't
truck.
burn inside the city.
They were going to go to one of the soil amendment recycling places. We're actually making pretty good progress. We found some artifacts, about 14 baseballs that were over, two of which are in really good condition, and once they dry out, could be used again. So that's only from 2 years ago. The M's left 2 years ago. We also found a couple of good M's plastic cups in pretty good condition. And since it was the birthday of Civic Stadium, we had cupcakes at the end and sang happy birthday. So,
Brownies?
thank you.
That's awesome.
George Floyd made me think about the young man who was the Eagle Scout that did the ramp. When I went, they gave me a picture of him, and it's such a lot of growth within 4 years or so when you're that age. And so there's a picture of him at our chambers sitting up in my seat when he's a little guy, like 5 years ago. Now he's a big Eagle Scout.
That's good.
City manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of items. Next Friday on the 4th is the Brava Breakfast by the ABAE, Alliance
Business.
Yes, Alliance.
Arts Alliance.
Wow, Arts and Business Alliance of Eugene. Their semi-annual breakfast. And on the 11th, our Vets Housing Project will be ribbon cutting on our first rental, which is a great project. And I know, Mayor, you'll be out there and saying a few words, which thank you very much. That'll be great. And then, Alan, thanks for bringing up on the ped and bicycle tour. I had a chance to go out with that group. I go out every year with Shane Rhodes from 4J, who's their school coordinator, Safe Routes to School coordinator, and we met up with several folks and took a trip around parts of Eugene. I just want to say thanks to several of our transportation planners that have helped a lot in the bike and ped project. They are just such a refreshing group of people, extremely enthusiastic, very professional, have just a really nice sense, nice commitment to the community, and I think for just the quality of life in this community. So I just want to say thank you to them for all the work that they're doing.
The one other thing that I was thinking that we should add to this is city manager and I had a chance to go over to meet with people at the University District for us hotels, and I just wanted to say to you that they're still on, the plan is still on for some real renovation there and new building and all of that. So it's not gone away. It's still there and still working on it. So good for our downtown, good for our city. Okay, I think we're through with our reports and items of interest, and now we're going to get ready for our work session, the Human Rights Project recommendations. I think we're going to have a shift in seats, right?
Right, we'll be, there's 6 people that are coming up and joining you at the table. I know Pat wanted to make some opening comments, so we'll bring the others on up, Cal.
Bring them up and then have to.
Okay.
Tastes a lot better if you crumple it up and put it in the
Yeah, should we make some more recommendations?
Sure. Come on up.
Around here.
We'll make way.
We'll make plenty of room.
We might need to bring it. Sorry.
Bye.
Seat then.
Okay, all right.
no, we're good.
This is about the Human Rights Project recommendation. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. Thank you. And we're going to let Pat start things out.
Thank you. I'll be very brief because most of the important stuff will come from the folks sitting around the table. I'd like to introduce Tony, who is the chair of Human Rights. Ken is our vice chair. What's your name again? Raquel is our staff. Elizabeth Andrade is a member. Craig is joining us. And we do have other members in the audience, if you would raise your hand.
Guadalupe.
Don't forget Guadalupe.
Guadalupe.
I beg your pardon, Guadalupe. Tonight you're going to be hearing about the listening sessions that the Human Rights Commission was involved with, which Guadalupe was very, very much involved with. It's not to be confused with the work plan, which will be presented on November 16th. So you'll hear a little bit about the work plan, but this is more a report on the listening sessions. I just want to let you know that the Human Rights Commission, with the new leadership, is in very good hands at this point in time. We're looking at, I believe, the dawn of a new era for the Human Rights Commission, where perhaps they can address issues a little bit more completely, a little bit more directly, and be more responsive and less reactive for issues for the future. With that, I will turn it over to Raquel.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Beth. Thank you for your time this evening. I'm Raquel Wells, the Equity and Human Rights Manager, and I do want to let folks introduce themselves and what they're connected to, so I'll start here and then we'll go, so you can get their full names and everything.
I'm Ken Newbeck. I'm the Vice Chair of the Human Rights Commission.
And I'm Guadalupe Quinn, and I coordinate an immigrant rights advocacy program with Amigos, and I was also part of the think tank.
I'm Tony Gatto. I'm the Chair of the Human Rights Commission and currently Chair of the Accessibility Committee.
Elizabeth Andrade, Commissioner only.
Craig Smith, staff, and I've been part of the Equity and Human Rights Staff Board for the last couple of years and got into the project that way.
So we're here today to share with you the results of our Human Rights Listening Project, which has been an intensive community outreach and engagement process that we started in April. So we're going to kind of walk you through the project, everybody will share a little piece of their perspective of the project, and then we have some preliminary recommendations based on this project that will help us update our Human Rights Commission code. So that's where we're heading. I do want to say thanks to our project team members. We have a few of them in the audience as well. So Tony, Ray Dean is back there, Elizabeth, Ken, Martha Fish, Francisca Johnson, Kevin Finney, Craig Smith, Michelle Mortensen, myself, Holly Lemesrier, and Leisha McParland. So the project team was an equal representation of staff and commissioners, and we worked together to oversee kind of the details of this project. And so it was a commitment for many months, so a lot of folks gave a lot of time to help us with this and with the outreach pieces that we heard about. So we started off with this idea of naming our best outcomes for the project, and I just want to remind a few of what those were. We wanted a clearer, focused Human Rights Commission and Equity and Human Rights program that had measurable goals and outcomes. We really wanted to build community relationships. The HRC would have clarity and focus, and that it would be apparent to everyone, and folks knew how to use the commission, and that the commission would feel successful, and that council would feel that they were getting adequate advisory capacity, and that everybody would be meeting its human rights obligations. We really wanted to be able to act on what we heard from community and to update the ordinance to be very current and to help us guide our work into the future. So we really listened and connected with community as one of our best outcomes. And then we came to you all in May of 2011, so I wanted to remind you of some of the best outcomes and advice that we heard during that session. Folks wanted open communication. They wanted to be able to provide HRC with specific topics to focus on. There was advice around don't let single issues consume you or get bogged down, and not to lose sight of other issues. The commissioners felt like they wanted to be used to be proactive and advisory, more effective, and that there was a real need to use multiple communication venues, both one-on-ones, memos, liaisons, meetings with counselors, and in work sessions. So these were some of the pieces of advice that we heard during our listening session with council. The Human Rights Listening Project was really broken up into 3 areas. And so we had listening and input, which we did a series of outreach strategies and listening circles, surveys, stakeholder interviews, meet and greets. And then we did a research analysis and kind of a think tank phase. And then we developed some recommendations. Oh, there's Martha. So at this time, with our listening and outreach, we outreached to over 664 people during these during the listening and outreach phase. So that's a pretty significant number of community folks that we listened to. And we wanted to pay special attention to hear from youth, as well as our community members who are without homes. Those were 2 areas of focus that the project team really wanted us to make sure that we created space and opportunities for. So Elizabeth and Craig are going to talk a little bit about the listening and outreach phase based on their experience.
Okay. Well, from my experience, I was actually thoroughly honored to be a listener to all these folks, our community members on human rights issues. What I discovered is I attended 6 different types of sessions, and so the variety was pretty exciting in some ways to show the depth and the breadth of what we were doing. I attended an accessibility focus group with 25 stakeholders. I attended the Saturday market in a booth to talk to people and have them fill out surveys. I attended the We Are Bethel Festival to talk to folks in Bethel to fill out surveys and get their perspective on things. I interviewed random youth at the downtown LTD bus stop. I also had a very focused interview with Marshall Peters from an HRC member 20 years ago. So what we got is a lot of broad perspective on what people thought when asked the questions, what are your critical human rights that you need and what the city needs. An example of that might be at the Saturday market, we sat down for 20 minutes and listened to a woman whose husband had become ill, severely ill, lost his job, lost his health care, lost their house, and was looking for resources to just support them in the dire needs of their life at that point. And 5 minutes later, I turned around and a gentleman asked me what I was doing, and I told him I was talking about human rights with people, and his response was, not everybody deserves human rights. You have to earn them. You have to be a productive member of society to earn your human rights. And so the breadth there was amazing in a half-hour time period. The depth of things was also incredible. I would talk to youth at the mall and hear their instant needs. Right now, I need this. I need space on the sidewalk. Or, I need health care. I'm a homeless youth, and I don't have anywhere to go. I need health care. And those were immediate needs. And then I would sit down and talk with Marshall Peters for an hour and a half and hear from him the historical perspective of the last 20 to 25 years in Eugene and what he's seen evolve, being one of the originators of the code that was written back then, and see that real depth of what he was offering. So it was a great experience, a lot of variety, a lot of breadth, a lot of depth. One common ground, though, was everybody I spoke to was passionate about speaking about human rights, and that really came across strong. Whoever I spoke to had some type of answer for me. So,
Thank you. Well, I had the opportunity to coordinate the listening session with the communities of color, and we met on July 6th at the Longhouse of Lane Community College. We had a group of total 19 leaders, and although it was a very small group, it was very diverse, and there was representation of almost every community of color who lives in Eugene. And actually, it was good to have that small group because we had the opportunity to have a very deep and rich conversation where everybody had the room and time to participate. And the comments were very candid and honest. It was a common, across the board, common ground that all the communities of color have the same needs and issues. Also in the group we had some former human rights commissioners. We had leaders who have been in Eugene since the initial conversations that the city has had about human rights. And they talk, the painful experiences and the resistance that it was at that time, for the larger community, and how much they endured to pave the way for the new residents of color coming to the city and to make it more welcoming. And although we are not there yet, there was a very positive, good energy that the city is committed to move it forward. And the common agreement we got out of this conversation was that the dynamics of times have changed, and the current ordinance no longer serves all the communities, and that the city needs to keep in mind a structural equity that is very inclusive and that also uses well the resources that the city has. So a recommendation was that this 20-year-old ordinance is too old and too narrow to serve the needs of the current times. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So while listening to the community was really a huge part of this project, we also did a fair amount of research and utilized the wisdom of those who had done this work previously. We invited both community experts and staff experts to come together and give us their best thinking on the issues that were raised in our listening phase. They also used the case study research, and you have a copy of this in your attachments, but we looked at Alexandria, Virginia, Austin, Texas, Des Moines, Iowa, Fort Collins, Colorado, Tacoma, Washington, and then also we looked at the city of Portland and the city of Salem, which are both based on our 20-year-old history, so we are very familiar with their programs. But we used those case studies to kind of help ground us on what national best practices were. So the think tank used the results of the outreach as well as the case studies, and then dialogued with one another to help refine the information. So Ken and Guadalupe are going to talk a little bit about the research phase and the think tank experience.
I'm going to talk about, just very briefly, about a unique opportunity that I had. It wasn't planned as part of the listening project, but I had the opportunity to represent the city of Eugene and the mayor in Gwangju, South Korea, at the first World Human Rights Cities Forum. And this was an opportunity, not only they wanted to hear about the work we've been doing here over the last several years in Eugene to stimulate conversation and to address issues of human rights, and human rights city concept and so forth. But it was also an opportunity to meet people from other parts of the United States, as well as from Western Europe and Asia, either that who are on human rights commissions or working in other capacities in human rights organizations in their local municipal governments. And so this provided sort of a context to bring back, to look at our own projects here and what we're doing. And then the second thing that both Raquel and I participated in this summer, we were invited to present at the International Association of Official Human Rights Organizations, IORA, at their annual conference in Austin. And this is basically an organization of about 160, mostly human rights commissions in the United States, but also some from Canada and from Mexico. And they likewise were really interested in what we're doing here. And this was a real wonderful opportunity to find out more about what other commissions were doing, what their structure was, what their operations looked like, what kind of work they were doing, and so forth. And in both settings, what I found was that the concept of human rights is extended well beyond, for the most part, civil rights and anti-discrimination concerns. And this was true both within the United States, developing within the United States, but also with other nations as well. People were very impressed and seemed very inspired by the work that we've been doing here, putting forth the concept of the Human Rights City. And then when I came back, and I was also involved in the listening project and listening circles and so forth, the parallels between what I heard in the listening project with regard to people asking that the Commission address a broader range of human rights issues than discrimination against protected classes resonated very well with the kinds of things that I heard about and saw going on at these two national and international conferences. So even though it wasn't thought up in advance as part of the listening project, it did provide a really useful context to consider what we were learning locally and to see how it fits in with things that are going on both nationally and even internationally.
I think you can probably hear me. And I had the opportunity of participating
That's
in
for the people at home.
in the, excuse me?
That's for the people at home.
Okay. I had the opportunity of participating in the two meetings with the think tank, and one of the things that I was really excited about was to hear what already had been going on as far as getting information and sort of doing the project around listening and going out into the communities. So our work with the think tank at those two meetings was basically to look at that information that had already been collected, to hear what people had been saying about the Human Rights Commission and its work and its role. And, you know, we had the opportunity in both of those meetings, because staff organized the information in a really helpful way so that we could look at it, talk about it, prioritize it, and categorize it in a way that we felt was in the right direction, considering what the information had been given to folks who were doing the outreach and the listening circles and stuff. So I had the opportunity to do that, and I was really excited to see sort of the new thinking and the new direction for the Human Rights Commission. I was on the Human Rights Commission actually twice, and the first time I think was when Marshall Peters was there. So we're clearly in a different place as a Human Rights Commission with the city. I think we have shifted quite a bit, and certainly our community is very different, and so are the needs and the issues that I think people care about. So I was really appreciative to be able to be part of that as a community person who works with the immigrant community and the Latino community, but also as someone who has sort of seen where it's been and sort of where it's heading. So I'm really excited to see the work that's being done and really appreciate the opportunity to be here to share that with you. And so look forward to seeing it to continue to move forward. And do want to thank the staff and the commission and commissioners for all the work that they've done, because it has taken a lot of groundwork to get to this place in order to build what we're trying to move forward. So I want to really thank them and acknowledge the commission and the staff.
So I just wanted to share some of who those think tank members were. Elizabeth, Amy Golia, Tony was a member, Linda Hamilton, Karen Hyatt, Greg Rickoff, Alicia McParland, Francisca Johnson, Matt McCrae, Stephanie Jennings, Kelly Osborne, Laura Stockford, Twyla Sowers, Marshall Peters, Carmen Urbina, Michael Wist, and Greta Utek, and Jane Waite. So we had a real nice cross-section of past HRC members, past staff, current staff, community members at large, and current commissioners. So it was a really amazing opportunity to look at the information. So we basically took all the feedback that we received over the last several months, and we kind of did a sort of the information. So some of it is informing the work session today. So we have 4 recommendations that are coming for your consideration today. And then the bulk of the feedback is informing the Commission's work planning process. They met last week with each other to design their 2-year work plan, which will be coming to you November 16th. So a lot of the feedback from community is informing that. And then there were some specific pieces that came to the city manager's office and to staff to inform our work plan and some of the things that we could be doing inside the organization. So you're not going to see the results of all of the feedback. You're going to see it in different places. So I just wanted to make that point as well. So we wanted to kind of talk a little bit now about some of the changes. So we're using a large amount of the information of this process to inform where we're heading in the future. The amount of time that volunteers and others gave over the last several months is appreciated, and we really honor that time. It was a huge commitment. In September, the Human Rights Commission and staff met to bring you 4 areas of focus for today's work session. So Ken and Tony will go over these 4 areas of recommendation.
Okay, I will speak to moving toward a human rights framework. And as you know, when the current Human Rights Ordinance was adopted some 20 years ago, the focus of the Human Rights Commission was primarily on protecting people from discrimination who were members of protected classes. And with the approval of the Council, for the last several years, the Human Rights Commission and our work plans have addressed the city organization and the community with regard to implementing a more inclusive and broader framework of human rights. So we were exploring, we were looking for feedback and so forth. As you well know, we've had International Human Rights Days around the concept of Human Rights City. We had a major Human Rights Community Summit, which you, the Council, helped to support. We have had forums and speakers. We've done trainings. We've done a variety of different things to bring to the fore the concept of the human rights framework and the human rights city, and to look and see what kind of reaction that we would get. We've received very positive responses to this concept through our community-wide events. And the city organization has taken the initiative in response to the discussion around the human rights framework and actually incorporating aspects of the framework into its 5-year diversity and equity strategic plan. And more work will be done on that in the near future. And also the triple bottom line tool, which directly reflects the input from the Human Rights Commission on the desirability of bringing the full range of human rights into the social equity leg of the triple bottom line. The listening project, if it didn't show anything else, and it showed a lot of different things, showed that the community really wants the Human Rights Commission to address a wide range of pressing human rights issues, of which discrimination against protected classes is certainly one issue and a very, very important one, but it's not the only issue that the community is asking us to look at. And so our recommendation with regard to moving toward the human rights framework is to change and align the language of the preamble to the Code, Chapter 2, to reflect the broader human rights framework which we wish to continue to foster in both the city organization and the community at large.
All right, I'm going to talk about the size of the commission as well as the structure of the commission. The first part is the size of the commission. What we heard, and the commission itself feels that we should reduce the size of the commission to 11 rather than the current 15. And what this will do is basically allow us to be more effective in the work that we're doing and less feedback at the table that can create chaos. And so and as well as we see that across the board with other communities and commissions that there's usually 9 there. So we figured that if we had 10 commissioners with one council partner, then that would equal 11, which would allow us to do that. The other one is the structure of the commission. This one, what we're asking for is to decodify our subcommittees on the commission. We've found that if we can have work groups that is tied directly to our work plan, we can be more effective with accomplishing our work plan and focus on that. With that said, we do have the city willing to have a accessibility department advisory group that will be working on the accessibility issues, which currently the accessibility committee primarily does for the city anyway. So they're still going to kind of exist in a different format there, but it won't be part of the commission's subcommittee anymore.
The fourth recommendation that we'll be making is with regard to the commission's recruitment process. Again and again, when we held the listening sessions and talking to people, people spoke about their hope that the Human Rights Commission could become more effective. And if I could speak in italics, I would italicize effective. Become more effective in serving the mayor and the council, in serving the city organization, and in serving the community. And one of the key ways in which people suggested and which we agree that we could be more effective is by better aligning the Human Rights Commission appointments with the requirements of our council-approved work plans. A couple of people said to me, Ken, you serve on 2 nonprofit boards. When you recruit board members, do you ever think about what it is that you're really trying to accomplish in the next year or two when you invite people to come? And I said, well, yeah, we do that. Well, then why don't you think about that in terms of how you approach recruitment for the Human Rights Commission? So this is something that we think would be a definite step in the direction of greater effectiveness for the Commission, is trying to tie, or strive to tie, as best we can, the appointment process to the work plans that the Council approves. We also, I think, want to be more active in the recruitment process. And of course, if we have a good work plan, we know what it is, like we're coming to you in November with a 2-year work plan, then we can kind of talk up and invite people who might be interested in those kinds of projects and issues and so forth to apply. We also hope that we can establish ways to effectively communicate with the council prior to the recruitment of candidates. We've talked about, and people have suggested to us, that we approach the council with our work plan needs before the whole recruitment process even begins, so the council has a better sense of exactly what we're doing and where we're attempting to go. And we'd also obviously want to better support the council in making the most effective appointments in terms of carrying out the work plans that the council approves for us. So what we're recommending then is that the code be amended to provide the Human Rights Commission with somewhat of a more active role, a role that's more closely aligned with the practices of other council advisory bodies in screening and recommending candidates. And final selection and approval of candidates, of course, continues to remain in the hands of the City Council.
So all of these recommendations are inside of Attachment D, which is the ordinance that we're asking. And we've been working with the city attorney. Jerry was the city attorney that was assigned to our project. And so we have what all of this looks like within the ordinance. So all of these recommendations are embedded in the ordinance. So our next steps are that we're asking council today to approve moving the attached ordinance to public hearing. We feel that these changes are strongly rooted in community feedback, national best practices, and will help take us into the next 20 years. We will also use the information shared today to inform our other work plans that we'll be bringing to you in the future. So those are some of our next steps. In closing, I wanted to read this quote. "We must once again talk about the importance of community, for one of the most vital ways that we sustain ourselves is by building communities of resistance, places where we know we are not alone," bell hooks. And this was a quote offered in one of our listening circles as a grounding quote for the circle that we were going to have that evening. And so I turn it back to the mayor for discussion. Thank you.
We've been, in one form or another, dealing with the homeless issue for a long, long time.
It's on our work plan.
It ebbs and it surges, and we do some things that are really good, and then we feel like we're not doing enough. And so I wish you would think about, I worry that as a council, we tend to focus when we feel the crisis coming to us again, as opposed to seriously addressing it on an ongoing basis. So I would just like for you all to talk about and make some recommendations to us about how you think that we could just over time consistently be working at this issue. It's not something that comes and goes. It's something that has different, it changes, it morphs over time. It's always with us, and we have to keep trying to make headway. So that would be my request, that you come back to us with some real recommendations about the role the council should take, and that we should all be dealing with that issue on a continuing basis. Andrea.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you guys for coming. It's good to see everybody's face here. I'm just going to give you some feedback on the ordinance that you're asking us to send forward to a public hearing. Is that, City Manager, that's correct? Okay, so, but if we want any changes, then it needs to come back to us again before we
We'll come back to you after the public hearing.
Okay, and then we can make changes?
Final approval, you can make the changes or at that time.
Okay. Are we on the clock? Are we doing a regular clock, or is this more of a, okay.
We got lots of time there.
Okay, so first of all, your comments were really inspiring, that, you guys are doing this work. I really applaud you for that. I just want to make a couple comments, probably only a second round, to Ken's comment, Mr. Newbeck's comments about the desire of what the group wants to do as far as recruitment goes. I'm all for having the commissioners look at the applications and even give us some recommendations, but I didn't see where it was listed, and I don't know if it's in our other boards and commissions, where we can pull from the applicant pool, regardless of if you all recommend them or not. And that is something that I think that, I don't know if it needs to be in the language or not, but that is council purview as far as recommendation goes. So I wouldn't want to give the false impression that we're going to automatically take folks who you recommend. And I will explain that. I think a lot of times everybody sees things with different eyes, and what some of my peers across the table are looking for, I might not necessarily be looking at. And I always try to read the background, what ward they come from, what are their strong points. And it may not make for the easiest working group, but, when we talk about representation on our boards and commissions, there's things that we, would like to see. And I would be challenged for any time or place to have seats held for wards or for ethnicities or for women. I think that, we need to be able to encourage that community to come forward and kind of do some hand-holding. When I think about the Human Rights Commission as far as an interest into the city, I myself was a Human Rights Commissioner, and that's basically how I got introduced into the workings of the city. And so I used it definitely as a stepping stone to my luxurious position now as a city councilor. But I would just be, I would just want to make sure that, I'm glad to hear that you're focused on that, Ken, but that's kind of one of the expectations that we've had of the Human Rights Commission. That's what my thoughts were. I don't know if my peers feel that way or not. So I would be very, I wouldn't want to see that kind of stuff codified, but I definitely would want to give you guys encouragement into how we can make sure that you kind of get a first look at it. And I will get in the second round.
We've got George Brown, George Coleman, and Pat. George Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. That was really interesting to read all this feedback from the community. A lot of time was spent on that, and there's some really great comments in here. And I think these 4 changes that you're recommending are very good. I naturally will support the motion. I look forward to public comment, too, as a public hearing on all this stuff. That just all seems really sensible. Updating the language to reflect changing concerns let's do that. That makes good sense. Reducing the membership from 14 to 10 and with one counselor, I think that's a very sensible thing to do. I think that actually you'd probably get more done that way, because I was on the commission for 2 years, and it seemed a little unwieldy at times. So I think that's a good idea, too. And dissolving the 4 standing committees is I think, in favor of ad hoc committees or work groups. That's a really good idea, too, to address because the concerns will change throughout the year and through time, and being agile to address those, this just makes good sense to me. And as far as the commission's screening and applicants and making recommendations of candidates to fill vacancies, I think that's a good idea, too. I mean, we'll still read the applications, and we'll still do interviews, and we may want to request that some people that you didn't recommend come for our interviews. But any feedback that we can get, I'm all for that, so thank you.
George Foley?
Thank you very much for all the work that you do. This is great information in here. My concern is dropping the commission from 15 to 11 to be more effective. Is that going to give you enough time to do everything that we keep heaping upon you to do? Are you able to manage that with just four fewer people?
I think we will, because we'll be able to focus it, you know, the task at hand, and really focus at what we need to do and not get sidetracked as easily as you can when there's larger groups.
Basically, what is your average attendance at your meetings? Is you getting about that many people, or are you getting closer to the 15?
We're getting about that many people. And then we
12.
have to catch up with different people as they...
Okay. And then the only part that I have any real concerns about is, and Andrew brought up some of the concerns on the recruiting process. I'm not, racking my brain here real quick, I'm not aware of any other commission that takes that kind of an active role in recruiting and making recommendations. Unless I'm just missing it somewhere. And I, too, am a little bit worried about putting that into the code. I mean, I'm sure that unofficially everybody, or some people in some of the other commissions, will go out and recruit some of their friends or do whatever. But it's basically it's up to the council to make that decision. We get the materials and all the candidates, and I'm just a little concerned that if it's in the code and we might end up with too many like-minded people. I mean, that could be a good thing, it could be a bad thing. But I want to make sure that we have a real good balance on all of our committees and commissions. Like Andrea, male or female, it doesn't make any difference. But my concern is that it's in the code, and I don't think any of the other committees or commissions does that. And I think we're going to start down a road that we really don't want to go down. So at this point, I'm not real in favor of that. I will vote to put this out to a public hearing and wait to get some more feedback. But that's where I am on that right now.
Matt, and then Alan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A part of what I was going to say was in support of what has already been said by commissioners and by Guadalupe, and thank you. But hearing other councilors speak, there's not much I have to say. I was going to try and sell you on some of the ideas that have been presented tonight, but going forward to a public hearing, hearing what the community has to say. Regarding appointment of commissioners, I believe that what Ken pointed out is that specifically looking at the upcoming work plan and the needs that we have for the upcoming work plan, I think that it really does much more closely match what my experience with not-for-profit boards. And when I was with Food for Wayne County, the board, when they were selecting new members, were looking specifically at our work plan. So I think it matches fairly well. But as Councilor Ortiz and Councilor Polling both pointed out, it is the council's purview to make the final decision, and it's also the council's purview to add names that the commission does not forward to the council. So hopefully we can get input from the community and move forward on there. Madam Mayor, when I first came to the council in January of this year, I did ask to be a part of the Human Rights Commission, and for the last year I've been blessed and honored to be a part of the Human Rights Commission. And I'm very impressed with the work that they're doing, and with particularly through the listening project and looking to the future for the future role of the Human Rights Commission. I really am once again excited for what's going to be happening down the road. You mentioned, Madam Mayor, regarding, for instance, housing security and homelessness. You and I have talked about that on a number of occasions, and I believe, as I recall from last week, the 2 nights that we spent together, the Human Rights Commission is thinking about that also. Thank you very much.
Alan, you're next.
Yeah, thanks for all your work and all your listening for the last couple of months. I'm also very anxious to see your work plan as well. It's kind of where the rubber meets the road. Where are we going? Where are we going to get there? What are we going to do? What are we going to focus on? And I'll eagerly await that. Are we going to see a sneak peek of that today? No?
Wasn't planning on it. Nice try, though. Oh, did you tell?
So I support the four things that are recommended here, and especially moving them forward for public hearing. But I like the idea of having the language be updated to be more inclusive and with a broader framework. I think that 15 is probably too many on the commission. 11's a better number. Having been on about 20 different boards myself, the ones that are larger tend to not get as much done, and but have good discussions nonetheless. Do we have a roster of
Yeah, I have a
current?
Yeah.
So how do we go from 15 to 11? What's our current number?
We are at 13.
13, and we figured we'd just, if it passed, as their terms issued out and they chose
Attrition.
not to re-up.
Yeah.
Or you could draw straws, I suppose.
We could do that, too.
Raquel, could we perhaps have the folks in the audience identify themselves by name?
Sure.
For,
Is that okay? Okay. So, Martha, you want to start?
That are current
Yeah.
commissioners?
This Martha Fish is right there. So, and then you have Elizabeth, Tony, and Ken.
Thank you. Right, good, okay. So we'll get there through just kind of an attrition, so that, okay.
Yeah, that's our plan.
We won't flop anybody off midterm.
We're not throwing anybody out.
Don't throw anybody out, right, okay. And then I think having the standing committees go away in favor of having ad hoc ones that more relate to work plans is much more consistent with the rest of our commissions. And that makes a lot more sense to me, with the exception of the Accessibility Commission subcommittee, which I think is a good idea to have be a departmental advisory committee. They do very important work and have long had a good track record of doing important work. And then on the appointments, I think what we're doing is kind of having the commissions evolve about how that they react to us, and I like the idea of having the work plan items come to us to say, here's the kind of things we're going to be working on. Maybe you can help us by appointing people that have these kind of skill sets. That's a good piece of information that we can take. You're more than welcome to recruit people. In fact, most commissions, I think, do that right now. Several of them actually do make recommendations to us. Sustainability Commission just did, the police, CRB did, a couple other folks. So I think that's kind of the evolving standard, is that they do write us a letter that says we think these people are great and qualified. And but with the caveat that it's the city council's final decision, which I think you've made very clear. So all of that being said, I'm in support of what you guys have proposed here. And good work, thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else in the first round? Andrew, you want to say?
Well, one of the questions I had, I think somebody else asked or mentioned, so I really, I guess maybe it'll come out in the work plan, but as I was looking through what things that the human right, the definitions and the things, there was one code that I wasn't sure, 4.650. I kind of caught my attention, but then I read forward and saw that, because it talks about no complaint shall be accepted for action unless filed within 1 year. And I'm thinking, is that a staff assignment, or is that more of a commissioner assignment for complaints?
It's a staff.
Okay, so.
And we work with the community, depending on what the issue is. So, for example, if a community member comes in who has a particular issue, we work with a community advocate like Guadalupe to help resolve or connect them to resources if we don't have that capacity within. So, for example,
okay,
like someone who has an immigration or issue or something like that.
So a complaint comes in, I call the Human Rights Office and I say, whatever.
My rights have been discriminated.
Yeah, and I can't even think of an example. And then so there's nobody internal to the city, so really this is language more for the staff than not necessarily the commissioners.
Right, we were just giving you what the Human Rights Code as background, so you have
Okay.
that as,
And so
this is our human rights code.
Okay, and so you would connect with a community member who has those skills.
If we weren't able to resolve it.
Okay. And so what is your percentage of complaints right now, or is that going to be in the work plan? And how many are sent out of the city and how many are kept in, or is that something that you
It
can
won't
get?
be part of the work plan, but I could get that to you.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to know. I mean, the police auditor does give us updates on how many contacts, what direction those go in. Even if it's, they were talking about Lane County sheriffs, and I referred them to them. So that kind of a snapshot would be kind of nice to see.
So the commission gets a monthly report, and we can forward that to council.
That would be great. That would be great, because
So the Sustainability Commission.
it's really nice to know what's going on, because it's kind of like this vortex right now, as far as, not being the commissioner aligned to that. That's not my assignment, so and I do read some of the minutes, but not all the time.
Yeah.
So that's probably about it. Thanks again.
Okay.
Anything anybody else has? No. Seeing none, thank you very, very much, and I appreciate all the hard work.
Need a motion for
Need a
this?
I move to direct the city manager to schedule a public hearing on proposed code changes to Eugene Code Chapter 2 regarding the Human Rights Commission.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please indicate. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8 in favor, and none opposed, passes. So very
Great.
good.
Thank
Very
you.
much. Thank you. With that, we're going to close the meeting.
You don't want to do consent?
Thank you, sir.
No.
In the last...